this week on thisiscommonsense.com, there's a series about the primary elections. The first essay was Fat Lady Score. Paul is writing about Donald Trump and as the likely presumptive nominee for president. I look at that and I say, what? Well, tell us about it, Paul.
Well, it's a very modern term. I mean, what kind of what does it mean? And partly, like a lot of kind of modern Orwellian terms, it means to confuse you and not to be quite clear. And it gets to the whole issue of, is the Republican Party rigged? Is it trying to deny Donald Trump? And now you have a number of very much establishment Republicans who have endorsed Trump, and you have a number of what could be called establishment Republicans who have refused to endorse Trump. But my audience isn't establishment Republicans. My audience, and I think the people who are going to save this country from going down a lot of wrong roads are not establishment Republicans. They certainly are grassroots Republicans who are involved in the political party, as they might be libertarians or even Democrats or Greens or independents, probably in large measure. But all of those folks working together can reform government. But when we get to the Republican Party, frankly, the Republican Party should be run by Republicans. And the Republican nominee for president should be who Republicans want to put on the ballot in 50 states and elect to the presidency. And so, we hear a lot of talk about democracy, and I love democracy. Not as a form of government. I don't want to get down the age-old argument. Oh no, we don't want to vote on everything. Of course we don't. But we want voting as a mechanism that matters, so that we citizens can control our government. That's the mechanism that this republic uses, and it could be a lot more effective. So when voters go to the polls and vote in Republican primaries, I don't blame them for being angry if later their vote doesn't really matter, and they've been told by the media and they've been told by the chairman of the Republican Party and other officials, you're deciding who's going to run for president. But a few weeks ago, a delegate from North Dakota, Curly Haugland, came out and made it very clear that the rules of the Republican Party allow the delegates to vote their conscience. And that, in fact, there's a very specific rule that says no delegate can be bound. And, of course, what we're talking about, and have been talking about on the, or listening, not talking, but listening to the TV talk about for months, has been that Donald Trump has this many delegates. And all the questions about will he have a majority on the first ballot? Because what's known is that if these delegates vote their conscience, the chance that Donald Trump gets elected or chosen as the nominee is not very good. Most of these delegates are not fans of Donald Trump. And of course there is a split any way you slice it, whether it was Donald Trump or Ted Cruz or other candidates. There is a split in the Republican Party. There's a split between the moderates and conservatives, and there's all kinds of splits in all parties. But the Trump candidacy has created a very large split, and it's not just among, Paul Ryan, the speaker, hasn't yet endorsed him, but John McCain has endorsed him. There's the officialdom in Washington is certainly scared because they see some of the poll numbers. But more important to me is that the grassroots is very, very split. And there's an awful lot of people who I respect, even when I disagree with them, because they believe that, their involvement in politics is about fighting for certain principles, and they're just not going to go along with someone who they feel like doesn't abide by those principles. And then I think there's an awful lot of people who look at Trump and say, the way he behaves is just not acceptable to me. I don't want that sort of behavior in my nominee. And I can respect all the folks who believe any which way, if they like Trump, if they don't like Trump. But the question before us, I think, is really who should decide who the Republican Party nominee is. And what I think the reality of the rules of the Republican Party is that the delegates are not bound. The rules of the Republican Party allow anybody showing up as a delegate in Cleveland to vote their conscience, and not on the second ballot, but on the first ballot. That's really the important thing that Curly Haugland from North Dakota, who has certainly dealt with the rules for a long time, is saying.